Hey everyone, this is Corey from Sims Investment Management, and this is another Teaching Tuesday. This week, I want to talk to you. I am so fired up this week about this recent economist that released just some really, really wonderful statistics to put everything in perspective. Because again, the financial media, it loves the doom and gloom. It rarely, rarely talks about how good of a position we are in this country because we are truly a very, very wealthy country on the whole. We still have a lot of work to do to bring up some of the lower class, right? We still have work to do to make sure that there's access to clean water and energy and healthcare. I'm not saying that we don't have our problems, but when you put it in perspective, we're doing pretty darn good. So I'm going to read off some stats here because I don't want to get these wrong. If you think about last year, we're 1 year basically from when things were shutting down with COVID. And if you think about the net worth of U.S. households, it is up to $130 trillion. It's absolutely remarkable. It's up about $12 trillion from where it was last year. A lot of that being financial assets, a lot of that being real estate assets, but in reality, a lot of that too is the debt pay down that we've had. We hear a lot about the public debt and the government debt, but yet nobody really thinks about, since the Great Recession, how strong consumer balance sheets have continued to get. We really learned our lesson in a lot of ways from a household standpoint after the Great Recession. And even though our public debt has continued to increase as a percentage of our overall net worth, it really hasn't gotten that much bigger. The stat basically says that federal debt as a percentage of private sector net worth. All right, so if we think of that $130 trillion and we're looking at federal debt as a percentage of our net worth, we're still right around 18%. All right, so it was wonderful back before the Great Recession. That number, federal debt as a percentage of private sector net worth, was around 8%. We've slowly increased between 2008, 2009 up to 2013. We got up to about a 15% of federal debt to private net worth. And we've really stayed in that range. It started to tick down here in 2015 to 2020. And then we obviously just had a pretty big jump because of the amount of stimulus and money that has been issued by the government this past year. But relatively speaking, it's at a fairly healthy number. I know we hear a lot of information about our deficit now, our federal debt, our public debt is getting close to about 1 year's worth of GDP. And that number is relatively high from where we've been historically. It's not very high relative to other countries. It's definitely not something that we want to continue to see get bigger and bigger, but it's still a very sustainable level. In the last chart that I'd love for us to typically look at, and we're going to put on here, is what it is actually costing us to manage this debt. So if you think about, yes, the federal debt is higher, but it also doesn't mean that our interest payments are higher, right? Because of where interest rates are. So right now, the interest payments on federal debt as a percentage of GDP, again, this chart will be on this video, is right around 2.5%. That's basically the lowest that it's been since 1960. So if you go back to like 1990, our interest payments on our federal debt were actually closer to 5% of GDP. So we're about half that. And a lot of people say, how is that right? We have so much more debt. Yes, we have so much more debt, but it's costing us much less to finance it because of where interest rates are now versus where they were in the 80s and 90s. And think of just your home, right? If you have $10,000 in credit card debt that's costing you 20% interest, that's different than $10,000 in maybe car loan debt that's only costing you 2.5% in interest. That's very similar to what the U.S. government has experienced. We're on that lower end because our debt just isn't costing us as much money right now. Again, not saying that we want to continue down this track of issuing more and more debt, but it truly is not as dire a situation as what the media tends to make it out to be. So there's a lot of charts there. There's a lot of numbers. I highly recommend you check out the website and read this for yourself. We'll post some of these charts for you as well. And we'll see you next time on another Teaching Tuesday.